Here we go. Yep, had to unmute myself. Again, I'm the world's most mediocre streamer. So welcome to the Purdue Capstone and Indie Development Mini Conference. If you don't know me, which is unlikely if you're viewing this, you probably do. I'm Rob Howard. I'm a professor of practice here at Purdue. I always require coffee to do anything game dev oriented, which is why I have coffee here at 7 o'clock. There we go. And of course, you're looking at the OBS screen because I only have a one monitor setup here. We're live at Kanoi 340 to do this. And hopefully, if you're viewing this and there's something weird, let us know. I'll try to, watch the chat on my phone as these things progress. But the purpose of us gathering today is to share capstone projects and also independent projects done by Purdue students. So let's get started right away here. Our first project is Ken Park. So Ken, why don't you come on down and we'll get you set up here. Yep, yeah, round of applause. All right, so you should be set to go. All you need to do is just bring up your PowerPoint and you can begin.
Cool, all right. So I'm Kenny Park. I'm working on a game called Gargura Quest for Bread. It's currently in development, which makes it something of a mid-mortem, if that's a term. But let's just jump straight into it. So first, some context. So what is a Gargura, right? If you don't know, Gargura is a virtual YouTuber, which is essentially a live streamer, where instead of using like a webcam, they use like an anime avatar. This has become like incredibly popular recently for two main reasons. One, everyone is really lonely, and two, people really like anime girls. So this has kind of blown up as of late. So she is actually a shark. Well, not actually, but she's a shark. She's in a group with 4 other streamers under the parent company HoloLive. And essentially, people really like them because I think the dynamic between the streamers is just really nice. And so they actually played a fan game on stream once, and that kind of got me thinking, hey, what if I made my own game? Wouldn't that be funny if I just spent a bunch of time and effort into something that I can't make money from? That would be pretty funny. And so the game was born. So this is basically an action platformer with some light combat stuff. The story focuses mainly on the chemistry between the different streamers, but I'm not leaning exclusively on that because I want it to stand alone as its own fun game. I'm making it in Godot, Praise Godot, and I'm targeting around an hour of gameplay because, I want them to play on stream, so I'm not going to lie about that. And I have nearly 400 hours of dev time logged, which seems like a lot, and it definitely is a lot. But hopefully it'll kind of be explained through this presentation. So here are the good bits. So for one thing, the gameplay, it actually exists, which is not something I can say of all of my games. And I really tried to go with a Celeste-inspired thing where the moveset is really simple. You just have 2 jumps and a spin attack, but it's really made complicated and it adds depth when you have these different platforming elements and stuff that you add onto it. So I think it's just really fun to play. I really wanted to spend a lot of time making sure that the movement felt fluid, and I think I've kind of achieved that here. So moving on. Personality. So I'm kind of working from established characters here, which means I have a lot of things that I can work off of as far as characters that are already likable, and just personalities that I can bounce off of each other. And so because of that, I wanted to make sure that the rest of the game really matched that sort of tone. So I have very playful UI, very bouncy, goofy, colorful stuff. And I wanted to make sure that the dialogue system, especially since that would be taking care of a lot of the narrative bits, could really bring any dialogue I had to life with stuff like these custom animations and also Phoenix Wright style shakes and various text effects. And the art was another big thing that I'm really proud of for this game. So I actually usually stumble a lot when it comes to my game art. It's only recently that I've kind of started to hit my stride. And this is kind of the first project where I've been able to say, hey, that's actually, it's more than just not bad. It's actually pretty good. I'm pretty proud of this. And then also, it's one thing to be able to make good art, but it's another thing to be able to make it fast enough in a way that it works in an actual game dev pipeline. And the way I've kind of been able to achieve this is essentially just by using procedural textures and by layering a bunch of different types of noise and just coloring them differently to make different textures. So if you look in the top right there, that's pretty much all the textures I have for my environment art. And you can see that it's pretty much the same like noise. Like you can see the little swirly one that I'm a big fan of. You can see that in like 3 of those, and there's also just the like horizontal striations and stuff like that. Um, and layered together, you can make them like very distinct and have them look like very different things. Also, I wanted to make sure that the animations were really bouncy and fluid to match the rest of the game, which I think I did pretty well. One big thing that helped was the squash and stretch with the jumping, and also I don't really know if you can see it in this clip, but as you turn your character, I'm basically doing a very simple cross or dot product, cross product, I don't remember which one, but to basically make the whole character model just tilt into the direction that you're moving. So it really feels like you're leaning into it, and it just feels a lot more fluid. So it's small stuff like that that really adds up to the bigger thing. So exposure. I'm not gonna lie and say that I am not making this to get some Twitter followers. Like it's kind of how it is. I kind of realized coming into it that especially with this big like fan base, I kind of have the anime girl advantage, which is essentially just a multiplier on any amount of likes that you're gonna get on a post. And I say that facetiously, but it's kind of true because they're very active on Twitter. Essentially, or also Godot is very active on Twitter. People who use Godot really like retweeting games that are made in Godot because I kind of feel like everyone who uses Godot kind of has an inferiority complex and like wants to prove like, hey guys, like real games are being made in Godot. But that's aside. So yeah, part of it is definitely a mirage. Most of these people are following me for like this game, and if I post stuff that isn't this game, you can definitely see that the engagement drops a lot. But like, it's not a big deal to me. It's whatever. So now onto the not as good stuff. Oh, that's crazy. That's my Twitter. I don't know how that got there. So the not as good bits. There's a lot of them. So first off, this game kind of went through a lot of different identities. It started as a 2D racing game, then it turned into a cowboy shooter, which would have been sick if I liked cowboys, but then I don't. So I went to, I thought it'd be fun to make like a Dark Souls clone, where it's like very cutesy art, very cutesy everything, but like it's actually very brutal gameplay. But that was kind of just too much effort. So I ended up settling for basically like the Wind Waker-y combat that you see now, with some light puzzle stuff and some light platforming. But it took me a couple hundred hours of dev time to get there. Not all of them was wasted because I did like work on a lot of other stuff foundationally in order to get to that point. And I still use the gun stuff for different projects. But the platforming was really an afterthought, which is now kind of a mainstay in the game once I realized like, hey, this is actually probably the most fun part of the whole thing. So yeah, for sure, try to get like a foundation of what your game is before you really put a lot of time into it. Yeah, and then scope and content. So I definitely overscoped. I kind of knew this from the start. That was kind of like not the point, but it was kind of the point because I just thought it would be stupid to overscope. And so I kind of bit off a lot more than I can chew. I'm still trying to chew it. We'll see how that goes in a couple months. But additionally, content is kind of a drag because I'm just not really built for that. I really like making systems and mechanics and stuff because I have a really short attention span, which means the moment I sit down to try to make content and just make levels and levels and levels, I burn out very quickly. And then also I'm having some trouble trying to figure out how to mesh like the platforming and combat bits together because and like this happens a lot in Mario games and stuff where the like platforming and action it merges together really easily. But for me, since I kind of have like a lot of aerial time here because you can jump twice and then do a spin attack, so you can kind of just like dodge or like completely go over any of like the ground enemies. So unless you like forcibly lock them into a room, which I do in some points, you kind of can't have that like. It's totally up to the player to fight the enemies basically. So I'm still trying to figure out how to get over that. Additionally, burnout, of course. I was burnt out. I might still be burnt out. It's honestly hard to say these days, but I'm trying to get over that, I guess. And then kind of going more deep into just like game dev stuff in general. So I'm kind of starting to wonder what the whole point is with game dev, especially for this game. I'm spending so much like time and energy and like thinking juice, which I don't have a lot of, on something that inherently can't make me money. And I mean, if I tried, like I would get sued into oblivion, which could be kind of cool, but I would want to avoid that. And there's kind of like two sides to this argument, right? It's like, no, Kenny, like you can't give in to the capitalistic like mechanisms of society. You're doing this because you love it and it's great and it's beautiful. And the other side is like, fuck you, man. I like money and I want money. And you know, it's like I'm being very extreme about it, but honestly, like it's something that I'm trying to figure out. And it's definitely been contributing to like the whole burnout factor because it's like, well, I'm working on this, but I can be working on something else. But I do like working on this, but maybe I could just asset swap everything. But then that'll take like way more time. So if anyone's curious, my current solution is basically I'm going to pitch this game to the actual owners of the characters. I don't think it's going to work, but like, you know, it's worth a shot. I don't know. It could be cool. But yeah, so even more than that, like I've been wondering beyond this game, like if I need more than I like it as a reason to like keep making games. Because obviously everything, I think, like any hobby or anything, I like it is enough of a reason to do anything. But when you are spending so much time and putting so much of yourself into something, or into anything really, you kind of have to step back and think about why you're doing it, and just, I guess, if I like it is enough of a reason. Because for some people it is, and that's fine. And honestly, it might be for me, and it usually is for me. But it's really when I like take a step back and realize like, you know, it's kind of selfish in a sense of me to be doing games. Like I'm putting so much time into things, resources, my parents paying to bring me to Purdue and study this stuff. And like, you know, a lot of times I think, especially with indie game dev, you hear about like, oh, it's a selfless act. And like this person's putting so much work and so much of their self into this piece of art. And it's like a wonderful thing. And it definitely is. But it's like, you know, does the world need another game dev? Like I could be doing other things with my time. But then at the same time, it's like, you're making a game about a shark. Like, shut up. It's not a big deal. You're overthinking. So on to the takeaways. Yeah, so some of the more practical stuff. So UI really changes a lot about how a game is perceived. One of my biggest pet peeves is seeing a game with the default Unity UI or the default Unity skybox. And it's just like, you know, you put so much time and effort, presumably, into the rest of your game, and the UI is just like glaringly default and not fitting with the rest of it. And if you just take like the couple hours it takes to make just a mediocre UI, it really helps to just make everything a lot more cohesive. Additionally, color can really carry a lot of things that aren't as good in your game. So if you have a solid foundation on like, I don't even just mean like color theory, but like if you just play around with colors and try colors that you don't think will work, like a tree, maybe it's purple, that looks sick. Stuff like that, it really helps. And also onto that with lighting, the color and like the tint of your shadows, I've noticed really changes a lot about how a scene is like perceived. Also post-processing, kind of huge, not gonna lie. You know, don't overdo it, but at the same time, maybe like don't be afraid to overdo it, because that's kind of a look in itself, right? It's kind of like the whole YouTuber game dev aesthetic, where it's just like the default Unity cubes, default Unity materials, and then you just pump up the bloom, and then it just like looks sick because our monkey brains like the lights. That's just how it is. And there's kind of no shame in doing that, because especially if you're trying to, you know, really get your footing on like art, or if you just can't be bothered to spend time making a lot of custom art, there's no shame in like doing these tricks that make things look passable and good, even if it's not necessarily like unique. And I've also found that taking these shortcuts most often than not leads you to like coming into your own style. Yeah, so that's that. A lot of best practice, especially for like AAA pipelines, they say, you know, you make the white box, you make sure it plays well, then you move on to the art. And I think that's definitely important for games like tactical shooters, where like the placement of a barrel 2 inches to the right will completely just destroy like how the game is played. But luckily, in my case, and in most cases, that's not really how it's going to like pan out. And for me, it really takes like a nice environment for me to be motivated to make stuff for that environment. This game was actually almost on permanent hiatus until I worked on a white box and art pass for one of our CGT classes. And that's when I realized like, hey, this actually looks kind of good, and I want to make something that I can play in this like level. Yeah, so that's that. Next one should be really obvious. Don't form your timeline around your most efficient speed, because you're not an idiot like I am, right? Hopefully. You can't work at 100% all the time. It just doesn't work. And then here's a big one. So you want to balance small details with big core chunks. I think a lot of times people will say, you want to get all the core gameplay mechanics done first, right? And then you can focus on the details and the polish. And while for the most part I agree with that sentiment, I offer you a salad, and this is a bougie California salad. Okay, it just has spinach and it has nuts. And let's say you want to do all the core gameplay stuff first. You eat all the spinach first. Well, then you just have a bowl of nuts, and it's maybe you like the nuts, but it's not going to be as enjoyable as eating it together. On the flip side, if you really like the details like I do, and you eat all the nuts first, then you just have a bowl of spinach in front of you, and you look like an idiot, and what are you doing? So basically, chew the food together, eat it all at the same time. It really makes everything kind of, I think, pan out better. At least in my case, it helps me stay motivated. And then kind of to bounce off of that, so the foot in the door phenomenon, if you've noticed, which you haven't because these are all GIFs, I don't have any sound in my game, and that's because I'm saving all of the sound for the very end. And the reason for that is because I know once I finish the rest of the game, the sound isn't going to be the thing that makes me think, okay, I've made all this, but the sound, no, I'm done. I'm not going to finish this game. It's just that's not how it's going to pan out. If I finish everything else, I know I'm going to do the sound. But if I try to incorporate sound into my workflow right now, which is already very convoluted, that could actually be something that makes me stop developing the game. So that's just kind of something that I thought maybe would be practical and useful. And then finally, this is more for me than anyone else, but you need to keep your perspective in check. I think, sometimes as game devs and as creatives, it's very easy to get very wrapped up in the things that we make and let it consume literally every active moment of our waking time. I've been there, it's just kind of how it is, but I think really what made me think about this and realize that maybe I should tone it back a little bit, I was working on the pause menu for this game, and it was going well. There were some hiccups. It was my first time making a proper pause menu, whatever. But then at the end of the day, I got it done, and I was super excited. I was like, oh my god, pause menu, let's go. I'm huge. And then I kind of stepped back, it's a pause menu. It's not a big thing. It's not a big deal at all. Not to say, obviously you should celebrate all the small accomplishments, because everything in games is kind of big. Pause menus take time. I'm not denying that. But if at the end of the week you look back and you think, I made a pause menu, and that's kind of it, maybe go touch some grass. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. So that's kind of the major portion of my presentation. And then next, I thought it would be kind of fun to go through just the timeline of my game through some screenshots. So at 12 hours, I have some 2D mockups because I just wanted to draw because I hadn't drawn for a while. Also, I'm sorry, I'm speaking very fast because I want to get this done in time. So yeah, but this is just a very basic animation and house test with a very puny trident. At 107 hours, I said, frick you, I'm making a cowboy shooter. At 171, I was like, no, psych, it's Wind Waker now, except the combat is awful and everything is stiff. 186 hours is when I got to the first art pass, and I thought, wow, this is actually kind of really cool. And that's where things kind of started ramping up more. So 271 hours, this is when I got my first bit of platforming stuff, and that side of the gameplay really started falling into place. Also, these big steps in hours, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that's happening as well, so this is just the more visual aspects of it. At 338 hours, that's when I got the combat really feeling good. The big thing for this was I made kind of in the Batman games where Batman will kind of teleport into any enemy he's punching, and that ended up really fitting well with this game because it's supposed to be fluid. It's not supposed to necessarily be about the placement and stuff, but more about your timing and just dodging things. And then this is where we're at now. Just a nice screenshot that I'm really happy with at 387 hours. I haven't worked on this game for a while. As you can see, it's March, just because life and other school stuff, but I don't have an internship this summer, so I get to work on this more, which is, I guess it depends on how you look at it, but I think it's cool. But yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you for listening. And if anyone has questions.
All right, we got a few minutes for questions. Anyone got anything? Yeah.
So, have you ever thought about
Yeah.
Try to repeat the question.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah. So, a very attractive man in the audience asked if I ever thought about recruiting other people for like to help me with the game. I definitely have, but there's a couple of reasons why I haven't. I don't want to bring someone else on something that I don't know is going to be finished. I mean, at this point, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to see this through to the end, but I'm still always very wary of like wasting other people's time. Additionally, you know, it's kind of a prideful thing, but like, this is my baby. Don't touch my baby, you know? I hate that mindset. I'm still trying to grow out of it for sure. But I also just really like working alone. So, yeah, thanks for the question. Anyone else?
In terms of how long you expect to continue working on this, what do you think is kind of like a cutoff point?
Yeah, so I really want to get it done by the end of the summer, and I think I can. If I work on it past that, I think I really need to reconsider some of the priorities that I have. So, yeah, this summer.
Any other?
you plan on pitching sometime soon to people who might buy it?
Right. Oh yeah, I did. So Philip asked if I plan on pitching the game anytime soon. I want to once I get like a solid. I just have to make a solid demo first, I think, and then a pitch deck, and then I'm going to contact them. But again, I'm not really hoping for much here. It's just for fun. So yeah.
You say you're aiming for an hour of gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Why an hour and how close are you?
Yeah. Okay. So an hour because I feel like anything less than that is like on the verge of like not being streamable. Because I do want them to play it on stream. Like I don't even watch their streams that much anymore. Like I just want to say this. Like I haven't donated. Like I'm not super into this. It's just because I like the characters. But yeah, that's kind of why. And then how close I am, I would say. If I put all the bits and pieces together, I'm going to say 30 minutes. And I think from here, since it's just the content, assuming I can find a good pace for that, it's not going to take nearly as long as, you know, because everything else is just systems and stuff. And I have a lot of the rest of the like story bits planned out. I just have to execute on them. So.
All right, any other questions? All right, one more round of applause for Ken. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of get things set up for the next group. So yeah, and by the way, this would be a good time to get pizza. And honestly, for the rest of this, don't feel bad about walking behind the speaker because that's, for those of you on Twitch, that's how the room is. Like you have to walk behind this lectern to get to the pizza that we have. And I do thank the department, by the way, for supplying that pizza to us. Okay, so let me go ahead and introduce the next group. So we have the Soup Initiative with their Capstone project, and it should just be right there.
Okay, is that it? I sent you another email with a zip if this won't open.
Okay. Oh, you know what? I think I may have forgotten to unzip this. So my apologies. So yeah, just go
Actually,
ahead.
we might be able to do it here.
All right.
We might be. Open archive, RAR.
Oh, I do have. If you right-click that again, this is riveting for our Twitch audience. Go to 7-zip, and that should
7-zip.
work. Yeah.
And then just
Just do extract here.
extract here.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
All right. And hopefully, looks like it's not going to take too much longer there. So
Yeah. See, this is all set up?
yeah, gamepad should work. Yep.
All right. Cross my fingers. Perfect. Okay. Oh, nope. Go away. What do you want to start with? You want to start with Garner's level?
It has the most art in it. Okay. Something about it.
Cancel. That's gonna.
Okay, sweet. Looks like it's working. All right. Are we good to go?
You are good to go. Yep.
All right, cool. So we're Soup Initiative Games, and we set out to make a 3D platformer. The initial pitch was we're gonna set it in a haunted house, and it's gonna be this cool like indoor thing where you're like hunting ghosts and stuff. And then we're like, well, let's make a level first to like test it out, like gameplay stuff, right? And so we made this outdoor environment, and then we're like, oh, we have to iterate on that environment. And so, okay, let's make more outdoor environments until all we had was outdoor environments, and we still don't have a house. So our game is set outdoors now, but good stuff. We will have a house eventually. It is currently being worked on.
Looks good too. It looks good.
It does. So I'm gonna go over the basic gameplay we have right now, and then just talk about what it took to get here. So this is one of our more arted out levels, if you will. I worked extensively on the character and programming it. So I know this looks simple because it is a single sprite, but because we decided to forego both 3D assets for our character, as well as confining everything to 2D if we're just going to do 2D, this was a huge pain in the ass to set up, that character. Basically, what went into that is about 6,000 lines of straight C++ code and like 1,000 blueprint nodes. It's kind of hideous if you look under the hood, but okay, we're not going to worry about that. So let me show you this level real quick. So parts of the team have been working on developing various assets we can place in the world, like that switch you saw there. I've been doing the character art, the character programming. Warwick has been helping with making particle effects and other...
just VFX in general, environment art, that kind of thing.
Yep, and the thing about our team is we are about 9 people. And it's been kind of a challenge to coordinate all of that because we have so many assets and we have to figure out source control, making sure that our versions are all lined up. And I'll talk about that briefly in a moment. But let me kind of cover the things that we learned along the way making this character. To go over the basic moveset, right? It's a platformer, so you can jump. You got a couple moves. You can crouch, you can jump, you can ground pound, you can dive. I really wanted to make sure that there was a good variety of moves and that they chained into each other. So movement is a big thing, of course. And early on, I realized that, like, okay, you can do a jump, you can do a dive, but it's a lot cooler if you can put those things together. So if you jump, that's cool. If you crouch and then jump, you should be able to do, like, a high jump. If you jump and ground pound, that's cool. If you're doing this and you jump, cool, you could dive. If you put that together, you can dive in the air. And then I realized that, like, air control is a big deal, too. So say you're jumping on a narrow platform like this, you might overshoot it. And so that's where the idea for this companion came in. So it is still a game ostensibly based around ghosts. And so you have this kind of companion that follows you. I tried to do a whole script where it would like follow behind you, kind of like Navi or something from Zelda, but it's buggy, and I do not want to show you that. But this lets you jump in midair, and as you'll see later, interact with some of the ghosts that appear. It also allows us to do cool things like, if you look over there, you see something kind of in the rocks over there. So if you put all those moves together, you could kind of do a jump, a dive, and then a little spin thing to get to like an area you might not have thought you would be able to go to, where you can oftentimes find something interesting. So the way the game is structured, you're on the hunt for these keys, and these keys will unlock doors. So I'm going to go to where one of those keys are, just to show you. And in the meanwhile, Warwick, do you want to talk about some of the VFX work that you've been doing?
Sure. So like one of the earlier things I did was like the grass you can see on the ground over there, how it's like blowing, and then
Trees too.
And the trees as well. The trees is like a separate effect with the simple winds in Unreal Engine, and the trees were. I have to remember now. Yeah, it's been a while. Okay, so grass in the wind is separate, and the trees are moved by the wind effect. And it was just like a lot of like looking at tutorials and like figuring out what would look good. So like there's parameters control the wind speed, velocity, direction, all that, and then as long as like you have whatever object you want to be affected by the wind turned on, the wind will affect that. So like that's why the building's not blowing here, but all the trees are. The grass is a separate thing using simple wind, but it like allows for more control directly for only the grass without having to affect everything else. So it looks so you don't have to like have everything at specific settings to look good. You can have them like at slightly different settings and they'll all still look normal. Because like the size of the grass and the trees are very different, and different velocities and different speeds will make things look just strange. Also added a shader, a post-processing shader for like cell shading.
This one.
Yes. So that it reduces like kind of the detail, just to have a different look, I guess. I don't know if we decided if we were going to use it yet, but
So it's still in process, in development. You can see some of the trees don't quite look right. We're tweaking that, but eventually this will become the main look of the game.
so it's like a bunch of different colors of it's split into like 7 different colors currently that will show up based on like the shading and light of that like object in that edge of that object, and that can be either like reduced or increased based on how much detail you want. So if you want more like shadows of different colors, you can add more shadow parameters. If you want less shadows, you can get rid of that. If you want more like highlights, you can add more highlight parameters, that sort of thing. The node setup for that one's kind of big, but it's honestly fairly simple. It's just like a lot of repeating nodes.
Yeah. We can't see the editor, but we'll take your word for it. There was a lot of things that we kind of learned throughout development. First, in the development of the character itself, and I'll ask real quick, how are we doing on time?
You're good.
Okay, cool. In regards to the character, right, we wanted the movement to feel fluid. So there's a reason that this took somewhere in the ballpark of like 6,000 to 8,000 lines of just straight code to like do, right? Because if you've ever used the default character movement in Unreal or Unity, you know that it leaves a lot to be desired, and we're like, okay, well, how do we make that feel good? There's a lot of tricks that other developers have come up with over the years, so we employed some of them. For example, if you press A right as you're about to hit the ground, we'll actually make the character jump right when you hit the ground. We noticed a lot of people would, they would jump and say they want to jump again, right? So they'd press A slightly before hitting the ground, and if you don't program for that, that doesn't register, and then your players become frustrated. Additionally, if you're on a ledge, you get on a ledge, and you go off a ledge, right? There's a small window of time during which you can still jump. So other developers have called that coyote time. That's another one of those usability things that it enhances the feel of the game. You wouldn't think to do it initially, and as a player, you're never going to notice it, but you will play the game and be like, you know what, this feels good to control. I don't know how it feels good, but it does. A lot of other tips we picked up along the way. Carrying momentum forward was a big deal. So, for example, if you jump and when you land, if you turn around suddenly, typically what will happen is it'll do something like this, right? Where you turn around, your momentum kind of stalls, and the character feels heavy or sluggish. We don't have an animation for this, but this is actually a condition where you do a skid turn, and we'll have another sprite to show that. Otherwise, if a player turns really quickly, you want that momentum to still carry through on the character. And so we actually do a turn with like a slight radius. If you see when I'm turning, there's like a slight movement of the character in like an arc. That's because instead of applying direction in the direction of where the player is controlling, we actually apply it in the forward vector of the character. So wherever the character is looking, we apply movement in that direction, and then we get the difference between that and where the control stick is rotating to, and we slowly rotate it according to a certain angle. That's a lot of complex stuff, but basically we ensure that your forward velocity is carried through that turn, and it's one of a number of optimizations we made to make sure that moving around, jumping, chaining your attacks together is all seamless and feels really, really good. We were kind of lucky in that we had two dedicated UX designers on our team, and they've been helping do playtests with other people. And honestly, there is a lot that when you're making a game, you kind of get a feel for your own mechanics, even if they're awful. And so oftentimes there's something that's just broken or that you think is fun, and until you show it to someone else outside of the development team, you would go on just thinking it's fun, and it's really not, right? So this is one of those mechanics. We have ghosts that you can chase around, and the idea is that you have a camera, and you chase down the ghost, and you take a picture of them, and if you manage to get close enough and do it, you capture them, kind of like that, right? So we playtested this map with a couple of playtesters. I think we got like 4 or 5, and they're able to they managed to find most of the ghosts, but some things we noticed that like I wouldn't have noticed, right? These jumps over here. I'm good enough at the game to where I have a good feel for the controls, but new users would often get really close. Get really close to the edge of one of these platforms, jump into this one, and kind of be propelled back because there's a slight slope at the edge, right? And so the collision kind of pushes them back. And that was something a lot of people noted, which I would not have picked up on. The ghosts themselves, we got a lot of feedback on, right? This is an older version of this environment. We've since expanded this to feel more like puzzle-like. Going to that puzzle platformer feel is kind of where we're headed. To where, okay, you could chase these ghosts down and catch them, but that's not very interesting. And so what we do now is we have our companion, right? So I can set up a little ambush over here where I can kind of leave it in place, get behind a ghost, kind of chase in that direction, and then catch it. And then if I focus my camera on it, I'll be able to catch it. Instead of just having to run to meet the ghost, this adds a more tactile element, and we can build puzzles based off of it. For example, let's say there's 3 platforms and there's a ghost running between them. We can set up an ambush at one point, and then find a way to get the ghost to go to the other platform and catch it there. And to facilitate that, your moveset is also limited when you're in this mode. You can't jump very high, you can't run very fast. And so at this point, we have a bunch of these gameplay mechanics, a lot of triggers that we've developed, and we've play tested it all. And at this point, it's like we're piecing a lot of it together. So there's more art assets that we still have to bring in. We're planning on finishing out this environment, the other one you saw, and then once we put those together, we're gonna call it like a great like first demo, right?
Like an alpha.
Yeah, kind of like an alpha. But as you saw with the previous project, scope is of course a big issue. This game looks like it's in a pretty good state now, but like for a lot of its development, it's been trying to do something and realizing it's a lot more complex than you thought it would be, and then choosing to do it anyways. and then kind of getting behind on other stuff. So, for example, we added a lot of like the initial move set for the character was about twice as much like moves as you see here. We had an entire rolling system and like double jumping, and every single thing you add kind of just exponentially increases your workload. And so making cuts where it counts has kind of been a big thing. And even now, it's like we would love to release this game, and the plan is to continue working on it from here because you need to get to like a decent level of polish and then just make levels, right? But definitely there's a lot of lessons we learned about scoping things properly. I think the previous, so like there's a really good point in the last presentation about focusing on making things look pretty at a certain point, and I think I would completely agree with that. Like here we have a lot of things, like our game is very wide, but like in terms of its presentation, it's going to take a really long time to get it to like the level that we would want for every single thing. Like these ghosts, they look fine, but you know, we would want them to be more expressive. We maybe want them to have facial expressions or to move in different interesting ways. That takes time. We would love the character to have more sprites. That would take time. Even this little companion that's following you, we would love to make that more visible, have it be flying next to your shoulder, for example, but that takes time. And so, really I would say that while we had the skills to execute each one of these things, and even having about a year to develop this, honestly, that is my biggest takeaway. Just understanding how long it takes to really get to the finish line. I think some of you have seen this project from a year ago when we took a class together. Jacob, I know that you've been around to see this from the beginning, right? And some of it looks the same as it did then. Like a lot of under the hood changes happen, but it's really easy to prototype something, get it up and running right away, and then like you're like, oh yeah, this is fantastic, it works, and then we just need to polish it, right? But it's that rule where like 80% of your work or like 80% of your work happens in the last 20% of the project, right? Where yeah, we go down to like polish everything, and it took me an entire month just to refactor the code because it was such a mess. And that's time where there wasn't any changes happening to the project. It's still the same functionality, but you're just trying to get rid of a lot of the technical debt you've accrued by just making quick prototypes in order to, you know, hopefully build more in the future. So, yeah, putting together a big project over many months is difficult. Do you have anything to add, Warwick, about like also like working as a team?
Yeah, so I was brought on kind of like halfway through just for like our assets. Like all like the movement mechanics and all that stuff was complete when I joined. And I say like working as a team and like organizing that is a lot more difficult than I expected. Just like having everyone like commit changes to the project. Like we ended up having like one person being the person to like put everything together, because it was like really complicated having everyone getting access to like a level and like work on it separately, and just also like getting people doing what they were supposed to do was difficult as well. Because like I joined, I didn't really have too much of an idea what I was needed to do, I guess. Like what was prioritized, because I was new to everything, and so it's just like having to go after like just figuring out priorities basically.
There's a benefit to making a project by yourself because you know everything. When you have 8 other people, everything needs to be documented. Everything needs to be properly filed away and organized. it adds a lot more time to what you're doing, but not doing that just makes things worse. And so, yeah. Okay. That's most of what we got. I'll go ahead and take any questions you have right now.
Yes.
Roughly an hour as well. Oh yeah, so the question was how much gameplay are we shooting for? Roughly an hour. So we have this environment you see here that we want to expand on. We have the other one I showed, and then that mansion that you saw just now. That's our third one. Ideally, we finish all three of those, string them together, and like they become the core of our game. And each one of these has multiple objectives in it, multiple keys. So it's like a semi-open environment. Again, we think an hour is enough time to where it feels satisfying. You can play it in one sitting, and also we can have enough variance in like the mechanics we're presenting to you, to where nothing gets stale, but it's also not an overwhelming amount of stuff we need to make. Cool.
Yes.
How are you guys making like the levels? Are you building that in Unity with modules, or are you like modeling it browsers?
Yeah. So the question was, how are we making levels? You want to take that?
Yeah, so like a lot of the arts assets are made in Maya and then brought in as FBX files. The particle effects and the post-processing shader were done on Unreal using just the node editor. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So
Yeah. So
these
levels you see here are kind of our test environments. So every single gameplay element we had was thrown into an environment like this with just gray box assets to just test out if it's fun, baseline, right? Like this environment right here was entirely to test how different jumps made you feel. So for example, you could get to this one pretty easily, but you see that one in the back there, right? You have these kind of 50 by 50 tiles, and we kind of want to see, okay, how easy is it to make these jumps? Like, what's fun, basically? And so, yeah, all of our mechanics first started life like this, and then we brought it into a proper level and put art into it, and we're kind of like still doing that. So, yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, so the project not but something that I was curious about is you guys do 2D character and 3D photo.
Mm-hmm.
One, I want to say, the movement looks amazing. I really want to like think about that. It looks really, really good. My question with that is, was there ever a time when you were doing this that you felt, okay, maybe you might be better to do 3D characters, or was it always like, okay, we're going to do 2D for most of our characters?
Mm-hmm. So the question was it all? Did we always have a 2D character? Were there any plans to make it a 3D character? So pretty early on, we just committed to this. At the time, we didn't have anyone who was good at character modeling, but we did have a great character artist. And so we kind of played to our strengths. We're like, okay, whatever happens, we're gonna figure this out, having a 2D character. So yeah, that was definitely something that we stuck through. Not without its challenges, of course. Like basically, this is just one sprite that's facing you at all times, and we have to keep track of like direction so we can like properly rotate the sprite to make it look like you're seeing it from different angles, right? And like there's a lot of other small quirks to it, but like doing this was never in doubt. I think it's something that makes our game unique too.
All right, I think it's a good place to close out here for this presentation. Great job, guys.
Okay.
All right, this would be a good opportunity to get pizza if you haven't gotten pizza, because you got to walk behind me to get pizza. So, all right, let me get set for the next team here. So this next group, super ambitious project. As people walk behind me to get pizza, of course, please do that. Super ambitious project. We've put a ton of work into it. I'm excited for everyone to see this. And a couple of quick notes for presenters here. Do remember as you're presenting, the webcam is just like right there, right? So if you're grabbing the controller and you kind of drift to the left or right, then it's kind of a weird view on the webcam feed. The other thing I wanted to remind everyone of, since we had some people that had to show up in midstream, remember that your game audio will get broadcast. We just can't hear it in the room. So your game audio will be heard on the Twitch stream. Okay, so let me get your presentation up here and take it away.
All right, so I'm presenting on the Capstone project Talon's Blade, formerly, some of you might recognize this Project Revanchist. We've updated the name, made by Soulware. Just kind of a brief team introduction. Indy Foley is our animator and de facto rigger. Hannah Garcia made our 2D cutscenes. Bruno Guadez made our website, did web development. Bryce Way was a gameplay programmer and worked on some of our UI for our inventory. Jack Holt is our gameplay and combat systems programmer. Robert Rakowski is our character artist, our prop artist, and our texture artist. He also helped out with level design. Jarrett Ryan did sound design. I was the producer, mission scripter, and level designer. Trudy Townsend was our music composer, and Christian Standiford was our narrative designer. So kind of what is Talon's Blade? It is a third-person action game. What we wanted to do with the combat was we wanted to make it direction-based. So instead of kind of a free-form hack and slash, it's a lot more close in locked on. And the directions, which you'll see in the gameplay later, is what determines your attack direction and which directions you can block. So within the game, there will be 3 stances. One that's kind of an aggressive stance where you're going to mainly be attacking, and blocking is kind of a detriment, and then another one where it's kind of a neutral balance between blocking and attacking, and then the third stance, which is more defensive. You're going to block, you're going to parry attacks mostly. And there's also going to be a simple magic system that complements that. The melee gameplay, the magic system has not yet been integrated or designed. So kind of what this is a single player story-driven campaign. It's got 3 semi-open world levels, so it's got a kind of a well-defined start and end point, but within that, it kind of sprawls out into a more openish design, and then there are 4 more linear levels that kind of are your points of no return, where the player goes and does very specific things. So kind of the project status, still under active development. It is fully navigable. You can load in the very beginning and play all the way to the very end. Our goal is to have this finished by late August, so end of summer. During those summer months, we plan to kind of refine and finalize the combat system, get our inventory system integrated with all the armor sets, also create that magic system. The magic system won't be kind of the focus of the game. It'll just be used to complement that gameplay of the melee combat. Enemy placement within the levels, creating and designing those combat encounters so they feel good, and you've got appropriately scaled enemies, balancing, that sort of thing. Choices and consequences. This game is linear. There's basically, you're going to progress through it, but there are one or two critical choices within that don't change the story too much, but do kind of have certain gameplay effects. And then just characters and dialogue. Right now, they're all just mannequins standing there. We hope to have them actually be characters. We're not sure if we're doing voice dialogue at this point. It might just be written out, but that's something we're going to develop on in the summer. So what went well? The level design went rather well. Each level kind of went through several iterations, from paper design to white boxing, then to final art. Probably level 2 was the one that's been in development the longest and had the most iterations done on it. The second level of the game went through multiple variations of art. Mission scripting went well. Took a couple weeks to get the system behaving and a couple iterations, but once it did, it felt pretty natural and it worked well with the levels. Combat scripting went well, still in the process, but it's been a rather slow process, just getting that kind of the feel for what we wanted, just overcome some hurdles. But by and large, the combat scripting has gone fairly well. Armor and weapon modeling has gone very well. I think we've got some high quality assets in there, courtesy of Robert. So we've right now got 8 to 10 armor sets in the game right now. We hope by the end of development to have 15 to 18. Cutscene design. Our cutscene artist did a really nice job with cutscenes. In total, we've got something like 30 cutscenes. No, 30 cutscene images, and then about 10 actual cutscenes, which you'll see a couple of those in the demonstration. And then some of the players' abilities, those were fairly simple. They're not incredibly complex, just walking around sprinting, but those went pretty smoothly to implement. Now, kind of what didn't go so great. The major thing was rigging and animation. So we've got a really talented animator, but the problem is we need quite a few animations, and just the problem was we didn't have a rig that our animator could animate on, because the trouble we were running into is if we had only one armor set, it would have been a breeze. We make the rig, our animator just animates on them. But because we have multiple armor sets, that skeletal mesh needs to be able to work with, you know, every set of armor. So we have to rig up every set of armor the same way. So doing that in an efficient manner was a tricky pipeline to work out. We ended up going with Mixamo to rig it, and then we're going to use a combination of Deep Motion, which is an AI animator. You input a video, it outputs an animation, and then also hand keyframed animations. Scoping and scheduling. I feel like that's kind of a broken record in game development, is how often scope becomes an issue. So yeah, just working with, especially the open levels, just how long they were, how long we wanted them to be. So because they're kind of open, an issue we often ran into was that the time between kind of encounters was too long. At the moment, actually, in the current build, it still is a little bit too long. The sweet spot we figured was around 30 to 40 seconds between, you know, something that catches the player's eye and drags their attention to it. Right now, we're sitting at about 80 seconds, so we like to cut that down, just put more into the level and make it feel a little bit more populous. The other thing that kind of was a little bit challenging was the multiple gameplay reworks. I remember I mentioned that the combat, it went well kind of once we got the ball rolling on that, but there were multiple times, it's gone through about 4 iterations, first being largely time-based, and then the current iteration, it's collision, checking if basically the sword's overlapping with the mesh. So we've kind of had to rework that multiple times. Each time it went smoothly, but it's just the fact that we had to keep redoing it. Crunch, just the realization that we've got a lot of work left to do and perhaps not that much time. I feel like, you know, as you get towards the end of projects, you realize, okay, there's a lot of stuff we still want to do. Fortunately, because we kind of set our sights at the end of summer, we're not feeling that too heavily, but we imagine that once we get to that point, we're gonna be like, okay, now we're crunching again. Another issue was kind of finding the fun within the video game. You know, it's not fast paced, it's not action filled. So how do we make that kind of slower, more methodical gameplay interesting? So that's something we've had to work with, and it's really just it's been creating an enemy AI system that's really comprehensive, and it's got a lot of customizability within kind of how strong they are. One system that we developed to kind of handle that was a system by which the AI actually learned player attacks. So if you continue throwing attacks from a certain direction, eventually the enemy will basically always block from that direction because they know that's what you're going to do, kind of forcing the player to switch up which direction they choose. Another thing we had many long discussions about was whether or not we should have heavy attacks. That's kind of a staple in a lot of sword and board games, is for you to have your light swift attack and then your guard breaking heavy attack. We ultimately decided to more or less remove the heavy attack option because it didn't really seem to serve the gameplay overall. We've kind of replaced it with different directions having different levels of optimization. So your bottom attack, which is your quick stab, is more likely to hit and is faster than your top attack. So I already mentioned empty levels, and then also just kind of that loop of how can we find that every 30 seconds something's happening. You know, there's something fun and engaging. So now I will So this, what you're seeing, is basically the beginning of the game going through levels 1 of interior, exterior, and then partially through level 2. So here's a demonstration of the cutscenes we have. One thing about the cutscenes was figuring out each cutscene is a still image, but we didn't want to use UI where basically you use delays to fade them in and out. We wanted to use videos, and just figuring out how Unreal handles videos was an interesting problem to solve. So here you can see that that widget in the center is letting the player know which direction they are likely to attack from and block from. And another thing that was an issue was figuring out how we wanted to do the camera, the default Unreal camera. It's got some issues which we're still trying to work out with just clipping into objects and space and making sure the levels have enough room. So another thing we have worked heavily on is what happens when you have multiple combatants. It can get a little bit challenging sometimes, especially in the beginning. You couldn't block off-target enemy attacks. That attack that enemy just threw was a bash. If he hits you, it stuns you. The only way to avoid that's actually just to dodge back. So this is an example of kind of the linear level design. It's very corridor-ish, just get from point A to point B. The player also has access to that bashing ability. I don't use it in this demonstration all that often, but basically stops the enemy guaranteeing attacks. They have a certain percentage chance of dodging that. A lot of the combat in the game is kind of based on weightings and chance. So enemies kind of have a certain probability of blocking attacks or not blocking them or potentially parrying them. So it's not coming through, obviously, on our end in the room here. Hopefully the stream is coming through. The music that's playing was composed by Trudy. She did a really nice job with it. Created some very atmospheric pieces that really kind of worked with the level aesthetic. In terms of kind of the designing of the levels, obviously, kind of best practices are to go from your white box, then to your paper design, from your paper design to your white box, and then to your final art pass. We kind of, just due to kind of scope constraints, we had to do those things often in parallel, where one level was being arted up while another one was having its paper design done. And then even after some art had been integrated, a lot of art had been integrated, we still sometimes would shift and change levels around if we found that something wasn't really working. So here we can see the enemy you're fighting and the image you've been fighting. It's level up a different armor set to yourself. The ultimate goal is that in the inventory system will allow you to pick up those armor sets off of enemies, and the 15 unique armor sets won't have duplicates. So once you get, for example, this is the Rosnian set of armor. Once you get one of those sets, you basically don't need to pick up any more. So just a matter of kind of figuring out which armor set works best for what you want to accomplish. So here's basically what you're seeing there is a bug that we're currently actively trying to fix, where if an enemy dies close to another one, it's difficult to lock onto an enemy. That figure, what you just saw, was an attempt to basically guide the player through the level. So they'll see this smoke figure off in the distance, and as they approach, it will dissipate. And that's just kind of to let them know they're going in the right direction. I mentioned earlier that kind of fighting off enemies was challenging in the beginning, especially because they'd crowd the player a lot and kind of go right up next to them. Something that was implemented to kind of help fix that is 4 points around the player that the enemies navigate to instead of the player themselves. So that way, instead of bunching up around the player, they bunched up at these points, which kind of gives the player room to actually see what's going on around them. So here you can see there's another individual with you, and obviously there wasn't during the gameplay. That is an NPC that also escapes the prison with you, but then later dies in this cutscene. So he's going to be kind of wounded throughout that. We're going to have to basically trail along at your side and then hide whenever they're in combat. That character is mainly there to deliver exposition about the story, so not exactly gameplay critical, but story relevant. This is the cave where you basically find out what kind of busted you out of the prison in the first place. So this one I tried to make it fairly atmospheric. It's just a long hallway where at the end there is there's kind of the face you've been seeing throughout the level. This is the kind of the main antagonist of our game. You kind of see him here early on. And when you walk up to him, you can talk to him and he gives you a choice. Ultimately, what the demon is doing is he's offering you a choice to either become his servant or, not. And that was the choice the player just made. So how that is going to have gameplay effects where if you choose to, then that's kind of the canonical path and you get the demon's power, which is a magic system. It also allows the player to resurrect upon death. If the player chooses not to take the deal, then upon death, the game ends. So that's kind of like the New Game Plus hard mode. If you beat it once, taking the demon's deal, then see if you can do it again. Not taking the demon's deal and just not dying. So that does carry with it some interesting implications for the save system, because a save system is going to work for one, it's not going to work for the other, and we don't want to force the player to try and complete the entire thing in one sitting without being able to save. So they'll be able to save on the mortal run, the one where they haven't taken the demon's deal, but if they die, the game will end. So we're going to transition to the first more open level. So one thing we wanted to do with this level is kind of implement some level design fundamentals. So we start the player off at a really high place and kind of give them a view of what's down below, kind of giving them a nice sense of the prospect of refuge. They're up here, they're in a fairly safe place, although there are some enemies, but below them is kind of this larger world that they can explore. So now it's just a matter of getting down to it. Initially, this run kind of along the cliff edge didn't have any enemies, and it felt really kind of boring to just walk along. So we kind of created some lore for this valley that it's somewhat cursed due to events that happened in the past, and that kind of what we did with that is then we put these ghost ethereal characters that you can fight. Ultimately, with the ghost characters, it's not implemented, but what we want to have with them is, so when they kind of fade out of existence, you basically can't do damage to them when that happens, so you have to kind of pick your timing for when you can hit them. That's a demonstration of again stunned. Definitely did that on purpose. One thing that we've been dealing with in the combat was the implementation of stamina. So that's the blue bar that you see, which generally includes when you run and whenever you throw or parry attacks. So, kind of some testing with Howard revealed that it wasn't very noticeable when you'd run out of stamina. So you run out of stamina and then you continue trying to throw attacks, and there wasn't much indication that you had because your focus was near the center. What we've kind of done to address that is as stamina depletes, the saturation of the environment starts to decrease via post-processing volume, and then also once you are completely out of stamina, if you try and throw an attack, you receive an audible sound. You don't receive an attack with stamina. I'm kind of zipping through the dialogue there. The dialogue is still in its infancy. It's mostly just there to get us through the levels. The exact story implications of the dialogue will be implemented later. This is an example of the quest system. Basically, within the quest system, there are 6 or 7 ways of completing a quest. That involve just entering an area, picking up an item, picking up multiple items, killing a group of enemies, or killing a specific enemy. In this case, you need to go get an item. It's kind of your standard fetch quest just to get the player used to the quest system. So one thing we're going to do is have a world map for each level implemented, so that way when you're told, you need to go do something, it'll be marked on your map, and basically the player will have to use landmarks around the level and context to figure out, okay, where is this red X in correlating to where I am currently. As I'm sure this is demonstrating the problem of, the really long run from getting the quest to actually getting to the destination without really anything in between. So that's something we're aiming to address in the future.
I think if there's questions, you should start addressing them. So, yeah.
I like this playback. Yep, go ahead, Marsha.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of LODs are involved, especially the rocks are ones that we set up because there are actually a lot of rocks, but they're kind of occluded by the trees. The trees have LODs, and then actually the big thing was the foliage, making sure that had a proper call distance. The thing about my Unreal is, I'm not sure if you've all had similar experiences, but where it sets the calling for the grass in Editor is different from where it sets it after a build, so I had to kind of dial that in. So sometimes the performance wouldn't be great when playing in Editor, but after building it would call it to an appropriate distance. But yeah, it's a good question.
All right, other questions?
Yeah, you talked about how you're trying to solve the issue of like traveling from one place to the other. Have you thought about like adding
And do repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question was, as a solution to traveling between places and kind of having this long gap that where nothing happens, have we considered implementing mechanics that kind of fill that gap? We've batted around a couple of mechanics, but we haven't really settled on anything that feels good with the rest of the game.
And maybe one last question, if there's any more questions. Go ahead.
This is really small. Do you plan on having the character build this third sword?
That's a good question. Honestly, haven't considered it too much. Because right now the sword is directly connected to the hand bone of the player mesh. So that'll be something that we probably definitely can figure out as to how to build it.
And with that, we're definitely out of time here, so thank you so much. Okay, so let's get the next team, which is 6 Cent Studios up here. And let me make sure that you're queued up. So you should be right here. You can go ahead and there's the gamepad there if you need it.
But did you get our presentation too?
Oh, let's see if that's in the downloads folder. So sorry about that. I'll get a different.
Where's the web?
It's right there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So tiny.
Okay. Where did that go?
I sent it to you.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. We'll just take a quick moment here to get that. To get that pulled down. So, do you have that in the cloud somewhere?
I sent it through you to
Okay, got it. Okay. All right. All right, folks. What I'm going to do on the Twitch is I'm just going to briefly turn off the webcam here so I can grab this thing. There we go. Yeah. Okay, so just 1 second.
Okay, we'll go.
So it'll just be like, just slide.
Yeah.
I don't know where that was. That was the, yeah, there it is.
PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, and now that that's downloaded, let me just get everything set back up here.
I'm gonna grab my water.
Okay. All right, sorry for the delay, folks. Just had to get the PowerPoint, which I neglected to download. Now it's here, and they'll be able to take it away. Let me make sure everything is set on the, yep, everything's set on OBS, so you should be good to go. Yep, no problem.
Is it a good thing?
Where's the PowerPoint at?
Is it in? I have no idea. Rob, where did you put the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
It should be in downloads.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So just
okay.
open it. There's, if you go there, or yeah.
Let's just do that. And then let's just launch the game too. Okay.
Yeah, so we installed a virus.
Yeah. All right. And then let's do.
Oh yeah.
Just turn it down.
All the way?
Yeah,
Maybe
just
not.
during the presentation.
Okay, yeah. I think it adds a little bit of ambience to to the camera. Oh. That don't look great. Okay. Oh, what is happening?
Oh no. Oh no, there it is.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. So, hello everyone. We are 6 Cent Studios, and we're here to show off our game Redacted. This wasn't really practiced in terms of the PowerPoint, so we'll try and cover everything. So, first, the way that we want to introduce ourselves is I'm Jacob Mariquin. I
am, I guess, the creative lead for the team. But I also do character art and I do motion capture as well. Are things good, or is there an issue?
We just need to do the old switch display settings thing. And that should do it. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, I'm Jacob, and I do character art and I also do motion capture. I'll have the rest of the team introduce themselves. Sam.
My name is Sam, and I'm the technical designer.
Hey guys, I'm the environment artist and prop artist on the team.
And I'm Lucas. I'm the concept artist and do some UI as well.
So we also have some other members who aren't here with us today. We also have Leah Hearn, who's helping a lot with the Steam side of things and trying to get the game published. We also have James Cheng as well. He does a lot of the UX and QA for us. A really good asset for the team to make sure that we're doing the right thing in the game. And then we also have Shadow, who is our VFX artist. We have a lot of cool VFX that we can show off in the game that she's done. And we've also got Isabel Passis, who isn't even at Purdue anymore. She helped a little bit with the game at the start. But we actually also have Julian now joining the team, so as a prop and environment artist as well. So we can just continue forward. So.
I think we can switch to game.
Okay. Okay, so this is going to be fun on this little mouse. Okay, so for this game, we felt like we wanted to. Oh, do we have to change this, or is it good on stream?
It's going to be on stream. I'm just concerned about it not showing up on the screens here for some reason. Yeah, I think probably close down the power or like minimize the PowerPoint maybe. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yep.
So we've actually got 3 game modes that we can show off. One's the tutorial, one is survival mode, which is just the main mode that we would be normally playing, and then we also have an onslaught mode, which is a lot of fun. So we'll try and show off all of them in the time that we have. But the tutorial, obviously, we need to have this in order to kind of explain to the player how the game is supposed to be played. But obviously, that's not going to work the way it does because players can always find something to break the game. So we have an introduction here. Hello and welcome to Redacted. In this tutorial, we'll help you learn the controls and basically just the entire game. So it asks us to shoot the zombie on the left here, basically just getting you familiar with how to shoot. And then we've also got a really unique mechanic in the game that the game kind of revolves around, which is the barricading system. So I'm not going to read these, but basically the game just tries to inform you on how you're supposed to play these things. But the tutorial also has some mechanics in it as well that are unique to it, where we want to just inform the player how things can be played. So you have to come back in here, and then you can rotate this prop and bring it through, and then drop it on this pressure plate here. And that opens the door. That's the only way to get through. You can't stand on it, but I mean, you have to have something on it to get through. So we also have the nailing mechanic, which with the hammer, of course, you're going to nail stuff when you barricade. So you can nail props to basically anything that is within barricading distance, I guess. So we also have the ability to break down doors and use them as barricades. In this, we're just breaking down the door so that we can get past. But what breaking down objects or other props does for you is add nails to your inventory. So nails are what you need in order to barricade the props that you're using to try and defend from the zombies. Along with doors also being openable, like I said, you can barricade them as well. So here we're just told, zombie coming, so we want to get through. And if you actually tried to just shoot the zombie here, you couldn't do anything. The door won't open. So we want to switch to our hammer and barricade that down once it's green. There we go. So now we can go through, and we have a merchant here. So this merchant sells us some different weapons. You can go through and buy them through here, or you can go to the merchant himself, and allows you to check the stats of what weapons do. So we can see that the weapons have a damage, accuracy, and reload time check for them. We also have a med kit, some extra nails that you can buy, rifle ammo, and shells. But right now I'm full on everything, so except for the nails. But yeah. So another thing in this tutorial that we have as well is showing this very reminiscent of Resident Evil 4 shooting range. So this is just basically to hone your skills and use the weapons that you have at your disposal to get ready for what's to come. So yeah, you can just kind of shoot zombies over and over. If you fail, then, well, if you succeed in this, you get a little confetti canyon, and it's like, da-da-da, like you won that round. So that has 3 rounds that you can do. It gets harder and harder as it progresses, but there's a lot that we need to get through, so I'm going to move forward. In here we have a little just testing area with different props. You can try and get used to this type of thing. So you can rotate props. If you have it, you can use the mouse wheel to actually stretch and bring it towards you. But if you press left shift, you can actually bring it to its default position and as close as possible, so that way it reorients the object. It will always bring it to the same position no matter what rotation it's at prior. If you open this door over here, it actually leads you to the main game. So this is going to be a little bit interesting to do because there's a lot to explain with this. We have this very inspired by Portal area. I guess this will probably be something that we do a lot of talking about, which Ian will want to talk about. But let's just, for now, play the game how it was supposed to be played and try not to break anything too much. So at the top right, you can see that we have an intermission before the zombies start spawning. Zombies will start spawning and then trying to break down the barricades, and you just basically have to survive these different waves. You want to make sure that you're not being swarmed like this from the other side, though, and barricading both entrances. And they're already coming in. So I'm probably dead right here. Oh yeah, they're chilling. Yeah, there's definitely a difficulty thing that we tried to balance out, but that's something that we're like in the process of doing at the moment. Nothing goes smoothly the first time through, but yeah. So we've got, I mean, different ways that you can play the game, I suppose. If you want to, which is suicidal, you can run outside and just basically go around and try and run outside so you don't have to do the barricading. However, as the rounds get progressively higher, they also get stronger and faster. So not a very good idea to do that on the later rounds, especially with only a pistol too. So I'll take this chance to go check out the merchant, buy some weapons and some health, because I'm missing on it. So let's actually try and do some barricading now, because this is going to get pretty hard. So I think they even broke the fridge already. How do you break it? Oh no, it's here. Yeah. Oh, okay, so here's the system. If you break something, you get an extra nail. I didn't have a nail, so I need one here. Oh yeah. I don't think I have enough time, so I'm just gonna get ready for them. You can shoot through windows in this to try and shoot them as they're coming in. This mouse is so hard to use. So one of the, I guess, feelings that we had with this game that we were developing is obviously we had a much bigger scope when we did this. We wanted it to be a multiplayer experience at first, which you guys all probably know here that is not easy to do. So we definitely had to scope down when we were making this to have it be a single player experience. However, the game has this level of difficulty in it that we need to balance out for a single player type of gameplay. At first, when we were doing a lot of this, we even had different ideas when it came to the overall level design for it. So, Ian, I guess if you want to talk about that, that probably will suit you best.
Yeah, I guess I would kind of segue into the hard point as well. And what went well, what went wrong. Because, yeah, as you can see, I mean, some of the environment's there, some of it's still not there. I think one of the difficulties in the development of this project was we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what kind of era, what kind of decade we wanted to be in. I think at the start of this project, I think we were kind of focusing more on like trying to do like, oh, let's do like an 80s theme. Let's kind of work with that. And then I think we went through like every decade at one point before eventually kind of settling on this more kind of mid-century aesthetic, like 1950s furniture style. So that, that took a lot of time. And then with that also being, like it took a lot of time, and I think I spent like a long time working on stuff that eventually kind of didn't need to be used anymore. I think originally we were kind of doing this, I think 80s residential kind of like cul-de-sac neighborhood, where you had multiple houses to kind of go through. And very much that's not the case anymore. And so I spent a long time kind of developing a modular system that we could use that would easily allow us to kind of make multiple different houses and that you can kind of explore and look through. But kind of just looking at it in terms of scope, a lot of presentations here kind of touch on scope and how it's very easy to go overboard. And it's one of those things where, as a project, you want to be proud of the final product, and if you're going to overshoot and try to do a super ambitious project or environment, I know realistically it's going to be too much for just me to handle. And so
Oh my God. Yeah, I guess I should add that this is the different game mode, Onslaught. Oh no! No. Okay.
Yeah, so this game mode is basically the same as survival. It's basically one way, but there's way more zombies. But these zombies, they're all really fast, but they also have like very little health, so you just kind of mow them down, as you kind of see.
Yeah. So sorry, it's very hard to play this and talk at the same time. But yeah, we had so many different ideas with this game that we wanted to do. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll just segue into this, and if we have more time, we can do some more gameplay stuff and talk about other things. But let's go into this.
Look at all my guitars.
Oh, and then I think the display settings. Oh no, wait, you're good.
Is this what we want the
No,
stream
I
to
think
see?
I think it's vice versa.
Okay,
So
so
we want the stream. To
yeah, that's right, because the stream gets the full thing.
Okay.
Although, actually, let me look at the video here. I think you might have to do the switch view thing.
Yeah. How do we do that?
So go and go to display settings and then swap. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry for that, but so yeah, what the game status is right now, and just basically the whole game as a whole. So the game right now is kind of, I guess, undetermined. We have to end up publishing it at some point, right? But there's so many things that we want to do with the game still. In terms of art, we want to add different unique abilities and things that make the game more fun for the players, such as like a zombie exploding or even grenades to the game. Different gameplay mechanics like that we always want to try and add, but at the moment we're just doing finishing touches for a class project because that's what this is for right now. So doing as much polish as we can to make it feel good. We also are trying to do Steam integration right as well, so you guys can all play it, and it will be free. So yeah, go ahead and download it, see what you think. At the moment, we're just trying to iron out some achievements for the Steam integration, and Lucas has been doing that along with James. James has been making the achievements, Lucas has been making the art, and on top of that, I guess we should probably talk about the art, which this is a perfect segue for that. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, so
we had a lot to cover with art. We wanted to figure out the setting first, so that was a big priority. As Ian said, that we went through a lot of different settings, and eventually we ended on one. And so I kind of had a hand in it along the way, and was kind of giving ideas and stuff like that. But my main focus was definitely the zombies. We had a few. This is our base zombies, the one you see in game. We also did some other ones that were some special zombies as well that had like some unique abilities and were bigger, tougher, harder to kill. But they were kind of postponed for a little bit. But yeah.
So again, to even talk more about like this level design thing, we had an idea at first. I think that we started on. We were like, we want to do a cul-de-sac. Okay. We want to do a cul-de-sac with a bunch of houses that you can go in and pick up props from any one of those houses, and then we're like, oh hell no, we can't do that. So then we ended up scaling it down to, I think, we ended up doing a farm where we would have a farmhouse, and then you'd have a barn that you could go to. So like 2 buildings that you wanted to do, and then no, we couldn't do that either. So scaled all the way down to what you see now, which is like a portal testing chamber, and that kind of even goes into what the whole story for the game is. At first, we had something that was like, okay, there's this whole world that is basically unknown of what is happening right now. So the world has, or this town in particular, is experiencing a zombie outbreak, but the government came in and redacted the town. So that's hence the name Redacted. But that'll probably change again at some point because of us trying to manage scope. But yeah, you can go.
All right, so I'm going to step in and rub through the PowerPoint real quick. So one of the things that went well in our project was the zombie. As you can see here, we really went through like the whole game dev pipeline for this character, all the way from the concept to getting the character modeled and rigged and textured, and actually getting it in game with all its own animations and everything, as you guys could see, with it interacting with the environment, being able to attack the player and everything. Also, something that went well was the barricades. I couldn't really show it anyway, so I had a link, but you guys kind of saw that in the gameplay. Another thing that went well is we had our UX designer, James. He did a lot of playtesting and feedback, which really helped us to make changes to the game to make it more fun. Shadow also joined our team this semester, and she did a lot of VFX, like that confetti you saw, the explosions, like the zombies dying, had that little like red gush. We also had some audio that people on the stream could hear. Some of that was from our audio class. We also made use of the dot product for some things, so like zombies will attack stuff based on which side the object's actually on. Some of the things that went wrong, again, kind of going with the scope that a lot of other people talked about. We originally wanted to do multiplayer, but that turned out to be a little too much. We also had the boss zombie that Lucas talked about, which he did make a concept for, but we weren't able to do. Also, weapons turned out to be rather challenging. The weapons that you saw in the gameplay, we took those from another project because we weren't able to make our own animation, so we had to borrow some. And then also, I think Jacob mentioned this, was there anything else we would like to add to the game before release? The answer is yes. And it is explosions. We're hoping to add exploding zombies that Jacob's already textured here, and we're also hoping to add a grenade ability. Questions?
Cool. Well, let's give a quick round of applause first. All right, let's have some questions.
Yes. How do you kind of balance developing, what you need to for Steam while also kind of scoping down for classes, but also having ambitions beyond class?
Make sure you repeat the question.
So the question was, how do we balance developing like the class or the game for a class versus for Steam versus our own ambitions?
Yeah. So I think something that has really kind of come up in the game was just like the scope of the game was the biggest thing. Trying to make sure that we were making a game that was good for our portfolios and was also just fun to play. In previous projects that we worked on, we were always worried about, is the art going to be beautiful? Like, the art was the main thing that we were always focusing on, but then we felt like, it doesn't even feel fun. It's just super buggy. So we took this liberty to kind of, and with the great help of Sam, the game actually feels fun right now. So that is kind of at a standstill for what we can produce on Steam and for the project. We feel pretty good with that. There's not a whole lot of more development that we're doing in terms of right now. Just doing polish is basically all we can do for type of balancing that for the game class and for Steam as well. Does that answer your question? Okay.
All right, one or two more questions for this team. Anyone else got a question? Yeah.
So the barricade system, I've seen it before. Is it fully dynamic? And this, can you put it on any wall, or do you have?
Yeah, like any wall, like anything in the house, like anything that like anything, because all the barricades, everything is physics based, so you can pick everything up, move it around. The zombies can run into stuff, push it out of the way. So you can pick it up, put it against a wall, and nail it down. The only thing is you can't barricade props to other props. That's the only real restriction there.
Another thing is that we also know that players are going to, if we give them the ability to collide with the props, they're gonna barricade it on the outside and jump on top of the roof so the zombies can't get them. So we want to completely avoid doing that. And yeah, that's why we made the barricades. Just you can phase through them once they're barricaded.
Yeah, you probably noticed that when Jacob nailed something down, he could just pass through it. That was just to prevent like an exploit from people like stacking things on top of each, like making a staircase, getting on top of the roof, and then cheesing the game. But it also creates the opportunity for a player to like barricade a doorway and then being able to retreat through it. Kind of pro, gives players another option there.
All right, I think that should close it out for this one. Awesome job, 6 Sense. All right, we're down to our last team here. Let me just make sure we have everything needed here. So we have a build. I know we have a build. Was there a PowerPoint or just a build?
There is also a PowerPoint, yes.
Okay, and let me make sure I actually have that. What was it called? Was it the one called Pitch, or is
Yes,
it?
it's called Pitch.
Okay, so good. We have both things there in the folder for you. So.
Alrighty. Is there anything I need to do with the screen, or is it?
You might need to do a swap, like when you start it up, swap like the presenter mode, once you get started. So go ahead and maybe start the PowerPoint, and we'll see, because that's what the last group had to do. Okay, so I think because when they get that, the Twitch stream gets that view. So go ahead and just go to like display settings and go to swap. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we are Problem Child Game Studios. Our game is called Cirque. I'm Caitlin. I'm a level designer for the team.
I'm JJ. I'm the lead artist and the person writing the story.
We also have Cam Atkinson, who's also a level designer. Eamon and Lexi are both artists as well, and Garrett is our programmer. So our gameplay summary, it is a 3D third-person survival horror game. We have a lot of emphasis on the story as well as on the art. And we have a lot of kind of emphasis on our mirror mechanic, which is going to be the main mechanic that you'll be seeing today. There is a linear path through 4 main levels, which is the house, the village, the circus, and the forest. And we'll be focusing on the circus, and there's a mirror maze inside of that as well. This is just kind of our title page. I thought that was cool. So for story, you can kind of see here, this is the concept for our player character. He is wearing a mask in a town full of masks, and there's a lot of kind of mystery involved inside of this, where we've got like the circus that has mysteriously appeared, and some other interactable story elements that you'll find out kind of in the earlier levels. This is the actual character model for our main character. We do have him as playable currently, but we do have mixed mode animations, so you'll have to excuse any overlapping with clothing. This is our concept for our main kind of villain character, I guess. This is the clown. You want to expand on him?
Well, the clown, you'll see him in the level, but he's like, he doesn't actually attack you in the section that we're going to show you. But the idea is that in an actual playable version of the game, you'd see him, you'd be approaching him, and he'd look fairly normal, as threatening as a clown is, which is fairly threatening, but not super threatening. But then when you like actually get close to him, his neck stretches out like a jack-in-the-box, and then he like menaces at you for the rest of the level, and you have to escape him using the mirrors to like get away from him.
So I kind of already mentioned the key mechanic, but it is that mirror mechanic like we were talking about, where it's using kind of context clues to navigate through the mirror world and figure out where you need to go to get away from the clown. In the mirror maze, you'll see two kind of versions of these mirrors. One which will randomly teleport you to any other mirror of that kind, and then one which has a fixed destination, so you'll see that in kind of more detail. These are some of the fully arted parts of the level that you'll see today. So you can see the clown implementation. I guess it's not quite fully arted. There are somewhat white box things in it currently in the pictures, but not in the actual level, so they're slightly older. I'm going to just go ahead and go through the wins and losses, and then we'll take a look at the level. So in terms of the wins, definitely win for the art direction. The characters are amazing. The lighting is also amazing. We're quite proud of that part. We have tons of original props. So the circus tent that you'll see, the mirror maze exterior, and the mirrors inside of the interior of it, as well as our mini game places, which aren't currently functional, but you'll see them, are all original props. So those are really amazing. We have the mirror teleport mechanic is pretty solid. And we do have audio from the game audio class, which is not fully implemented, but you'll see some of, or rather, you guys won't, but the stream people will see some of the audio that's implemented. In terms of losses, we've heard it once, we've heard it a million times, but scope. So again, because we have such like a detailed art team, and we're trying to have everything be original art, we do have like a lot of time that has to be devoted to those character models, as well as their animations, which is why you'll see the mix mode today. We are planning on putting original animations in later, and also the levels as well. Just because we started like early January for this, we just have not had as much time to put the detail that we really want into the earlier levels. So again, that's why we're kind of focusing on the circus level as opposed to trying to get everything done mediocre. So I think that's the end. Yeah. So, downloads?
Yep.
Aha. All right, so here is the circus level. We do have kind of this forest setting, but you cannot, unfortunately, just kind of escape into the forest. You do have to go into the circus. I'm so sorry. So here you can see the tent that I was talking about. It's really amazing. Here's the outside of the mirror maze, which we'll go into in a minute, and the beginnings of our mini games. So here is the bottle toss, or ring toss, which we'll have implemented soon, as well as a dunk tank, and I believe there's a couple others that we're starting to kind of work on. But in terms of the mirror maze, I'll go ahead and take a look at that. So you can kind of tell, it's hard to tell on these monitors, but there's a clown reflection in this mirror, which is how you know that is a fixed mirror. So I'll just go ahead and enter it. There's also audio playing, or will be audio playing soon for the people who are on the stream. For any of these mirrors, you don't see the clown reflection. That is a random mirror, so just will teleport you to a random location. And I will just attempt to resolve this, if I can figure out where I am. Oh, yes, there is also a first to third person switch if you press V. So maybe I'll navigate the maze this way. Oh, I just teleported. The challenging part about the random mirrors is the moment that you enter one, you lose all ability to navigate until you can find another one of these fixed mirrors. I won't go in this one for the time being just so I can actually get through the level faster, but that is the general goal, is that you use the fixed mirrors to navigate as opposed to what I'm doing, just cheating. Oh, interesting. What happened?
I'm not sure. It's still going on the stream. I'm not sure what happened to the monitors here. Wow, that's weird. Okay. Here, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna turn the TVs on and off. You just keep on presenting, because I think it's still going out on Twitch.
Sounds good. So, some of you who've been paying attention might notice I've been down this hallway before, so I think I went the wrong way. No, this is the right way.
Okay, we got it back.
Perfect. Okay. So there's a fixed mirror I saw before. Maybe I'll go in it, and that will help me navigate. Yes, it did. Here's another fixed mirror. And that brings me back to the start room, so it actually was wrong. There we go. But that does kind of help you reorient. If you go into one of the fixed mirrors, it helps you know like where in the maze you are. Great. Love that. You guys just don't get to see. It's fine. All right, so this is the kind of exit mirror. So here is where you'll see the clown. So you can enjoy the lovely lighting here. If you pay attention very closely, he does breathe. So thanks for that terrifying animation. And back to the circus. Again, you can at any point switch back into that first person or back into third person mode. So yeah. That's it. Questions? Yeah.
For like the mirror maze, have you ever thought of having like mirrors that have like jump scare and clowns, like the fake mirrors, I guess, where if you try to walk in them, they'll like spook you?
Yes, me and our other level designer were actually discussing that a little bit. So that's kind of something we definitely want to include in the future, especially like right now as it is, I can navigate the mirror maze because I made it. So it's very challenging if you are first looking at it. Even like the first time that I played, I was like, where am I? So I want to have like various objects that are something that can help you recognize where you are, but also terrify you. So, you know, that's definitely something I think about. Yeah. Yeah, the question was, what is the story of the game? JJ, I'm gonna let you answer that.
Okay, so we have. Okay, obviously from the mask you can tell that this is like a kind of a theater motif. So we're gonna divide the game up into 3 acts. It's a 3-act structure. So the story in the first act is that there's this child who doesn't have his memories. There's this weird spooky circus. He goes to it, and there's like all kinds of nonsense that happens to him. That's really scary. And at the end of that, he gets teleported back to his house. In the second act, he's being chased by something that he cannot see. And the whole thing with the game that we really want to do is that horror games are generally really dark. We want to take the light and make that scary. So that's been our motif. I'm being very vague with the story because I don't want to spoil anything, obviously. But anyway, the whole thing is about him confronting his own actions. And it's like very metaphorical and very artsy because I wrote it. But yeah, so the whole thing, like the first act is him reconciling with the fact that he's clearly like not remembering something that he has done. The second one is him coming to terms with the fact that these are the actions he has performed onto other people. And then the third act would be like an actual reveal of what happened. So that's how we're going to go about doing it.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you balance kind of the necessities of
Yeah, the question was how do I balance, or how do we balance the storyline versus the level design and the game mechanics. So I would say that from the level design side, just trying to use as much environmental storytelling to kind of make up wherever we can't, include the whole script in this. We do have a one-step dialogue system that I don't include in the circus level, but it does allow you to interact with objects and kind of get whatever background information you need. So that's a lot of it as well. Anything from your side?
Yeah, so well, obviously I'm a game dev major too, so I know what the ability, what level of scope we're looking at. So when I'm writing stuff, I always make sure to reuse whatever code we already have. Yeah. And also I literally talked to Caitlin and Cam. I'm like, is this okay? Are you guys okay with doing this? So.
All right, any other questions? Okay, fantastic job. Thank you. Okay, so let me just say a few sort of closing remarks here. In fact, because the world doesn't want to see my mug any more than possible, I'm just going to put the image back up as I'm saying this. So first, I want to thank everyone that showed up to the Twitch stream. Really awesome to see the comments, very lively chat, and definitely big thanks to everyone coming out. Turnout for this in person was awesome, which is good because it meant I ordered the appropriate amount of pizza, and thank you again to the department for paying for that. And so just in closing, I just want to say a couple quick things. First, wow, the progress on capstones at Purdue since I started here, which is not to denigrate previous capstones, because we've done a bunch of things to support you, right? Giving you extra classes, more time, but it's showing, right? All of these are awesome, right? You should all feel really good about it, right? I mean, we've sort of gone from capstone projects being done in one semester, and they're really small for that reason, to things that in some cases have been worked on for a year and a half. And by the way, on that note, I'll just say with Problem Child Game Studios game, they did not have lots of time. I am blown away by how well you have all done in a minuscule amount of time, actually. So amazing work there. And finally, what I'll say to close things out, going back to something you said, Ken, and yours, in terms of this, you toil to make the thing, and is it worth making the thing? My personal belief on that, which I'll share with all of you and also the Twitch audience, is we all have, in my opinion, a sort of inborn, programmed-in desire to create. And I think it's always positive to create, to put things into the world no matter what, even if it's just your parents that play the game. I know this because I was a music performance major. I made lots of music that only my parents listened to. So I think it's always worth it. And this is an awesome time in your life where you are in school and can make things maybe a little more creatively than you could in the industry. So really value that time, and I know all of you have. All right, so thank you very much, everyone. Give yourselves a final round of applause. That closes things out for tonight. And this will be available on demand. But good night to everyone out there on the internet, and we'll see you all later.